but I think every entrepreneur is like that. That's nothing special with me. It's just some guys are doing it behind a laptop. I'm doing it in the field. And if my skills were behind the laptop, that's where I would be. But that's just not who I am. I've been a car wash guy. I've been a pool cleaner. I've been a construction guy. I'm not the white collar guy. I don't have that skill set. And I have friends of mine say, oh, you act like you're not a good businessman. But you got to know where your skills are. I'm not the guy that's going to run $1 billion company for you. Like, that's just not who I am. And you got to know where you stand. And we all have roles, and you got to know your roles.
Hey guys, today we're joined by my dear friend Guy Oliver, owner of GW Oliver Aquatics. We talked a lot about Guy's evolution as a father and a husband and a business owner, and then moving towards the next stage of his life as really a heritage philanthropist. We hope you guys enjoy this super relatable conversation.
Hey, it's Armin with Attract. At Attract Advisors, we offer accounting advisory, tax advisory, as well as financial management services. We're lucky enough to work with very many hardworking, talented entrepreneurs across many different industries. Many of these individuals are world-class in their sphere and have great stories to tell. This is our way of highlighting their accomplishments and their insights, and we hope you enjoy these conversations.
So one of my favorite things to do as a young entrepreneur is to get surrounded by successful businessmen, right? And we'll get to talking about what success really means. But
Correct.
Outwardly successful. And, when your name came up, I knew you long before I met you in person. And it was probably around the time that you had these builds going on in Carriagewood and stuff like that. And I was like, man, I've got to get to know Guy one day, and just becoming friends through the church, and then kind of developing a relationship outside of that, and the men's Bible study that we're a part of. I was just really excited to get you in here, to ask you some of these questions. And so you and I have kind of talked a little bit offline about your story.
Correct.
And I think that there's like some pivotal moments like in your progression. We were talking right before we jumped on with the recording that, going on 30 years, right? And so there's a lot to be said for 30 years, but I think it's important for our listeners to understand like where you came from. So like, let's start like phase one of your life. Like walk us through that.
Well, the first journey, I was born and raised in Baton Rouge, so I went to LSU. After 6 or so years, the only degree I qualified for was general studies. So got out, and I'd owned a lawn business when I was in LSU, and went and realized that general studies degrees didn't command a whole lot of job opportunities. So I got a job in chemical business just catching samples, but I'd sold my lawn business for $4,000 on a napkin at a McDonald's, and started making $9 an hour catching samples. It was either that or whole life insurance was the only jobs that really I qualified for. So 6 months into that, I was at my office where I was working, great guys I worked for, and saw a bunch of guys out there washing cars in the parking lot. So started doing my simple math and realizing, well, I could wash enough cars to make $20 to $30 an hour, and I'm making $9 now. Went to my boss, told him I'd like to resign, and started a car wash, a mobile car wash, because I'd signed a non-compete on that napkin, so I didn't feel ethical that I could cut grass again. And so started washing cars. And then at the same time, the old business, I don't know if it's still around now, called the Amway business, which was a marketing / I don't want to use the word pyramid, but that's what most people know it as. A man introduced me to it and got into that, and I didn't know a thing about it, so I got excited. Washed cars during the day, would do that at night, and found myself 25, 26 years old with about 1,000 people in my Amway group selling products all over the country. So I'd wash cars all day, and then I'd usually keep a change of clothes in my car and run to Jackson, Mississippi or Mobile, Alabama, building my Amway marketing business till I was like 28 or 29. And then it kind of collapsed on me, so I was just stuck with just the car wash business.
So the Amway business collapsed, right? You're in your late 20s. I mean, what does that really look like? Because I can remember getting pitched like whenever I was in college.
Well, what happened was we moved into the internet version of Amway, which was a company called Quickstar. And so we were very excited, and our website didn't really function as it was supposed to. And, companies like that where you're pitching a dream and trying to teach people to be entrepreneurs, number one, you have 1,000 people that probably aren't meant to be entrepreneurs, and I'm trying to hold it together. When the website didn't, quote, function as I had a mass exodus very quickly. And then I learned a lot of leadership things. Some of the, being a network marketing type business, I had people above me, below me, and we had a little dissension formed. So I learned a lot about de-edification of people. And, some of the people in my group thought they were, egos got in the way too. And it really was traumatic because I had a big dream that I was going to be, quote, free. We used the word freedom a lot back then. It was kind of funny looking back, but I got to read a lot of success books, listen to a ton of self-help tapes. So the mental component of my brain got big. And the fact I would work all day and then travel all night, my work ethic was really crazy. I mean, people think they work a lot, 10 hours a day. Back then I was probably putting in 16 to 18 hours a day, sleeping very little. So I got very confident that if I could get something I could really run that would catch, my work ethic would never hold me back because I felt like I could work with the best of them.
And where did that come from, like your work ethic?
In all honesty, my dad was a very, very hard worker, never really succeeded financially, just had some bad things happen as an entrepreneur he was one of the entrepreneurs that didn't, quote, make it. So watching that, but I think a lot of it was my mom struggled and was able to put me in private school. So I was around a lot of successful kids that had successful parents, and I really just got a drive in me that, I wanted to be like those guys. So I think being around a lot of money but not having any just kind of drove me that I wanted to have that, I wanted to chase the entrepreneurial dream and just always worked hard. I just never was a lazy person.
There's a lot of similarities with me on that too, right? Because I grew up in Shenandoah, I went to St. Michael private school, but the same way, like you really learn so much from your friends' parents.
You really do.
And, we'll circle back later on to this, like as it relates to empower, but like kind of like how we grew up with like that type of exposure.
Yes.
And then like what's going on today with Empower 225. But we'll get back to that in a minute. And so Amway collapses. You're entering your 30s. You've got a great work ethic. And something else I wanted to touch on too, we were talking off camera about this, but like a podcast like this is media. You kind of built your business on in-register and print ads and things of that nature. But the same way goes for how content gets consumed, because you had the Tony Robbins tapes or whatever it was.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now it's podcast these days, right? And I watched a podcast the other day with Tony Robbins and this guy Alex Hormozy, who is this great marketing mind. And it's just so interesting how the game is the same. It's just a different avenue.
That's correct.
And so you, I guess, had a lot of time in the car back then, and like it took discipline though for you to listen to those tapes and not like sports radio, right? So did you have people who like said you should listen to these tapes, or you just kind of sought it out?
Yeah, well, Amway was a big self-help type network. I think it's still a very successful company, and there are ways you can build it right. We didn't build the right foundation, so it collapsed. But I've always felt like I use my car a lot as like the traveling library, knowing that if I don't change my way of thinking, the old saying, your net worth will never outgrow your self-worth. And so, when you first start chasing the business, it's all ego-driven. At least for me it was. Maybe I was a little more, I needed to be important so badly. I know a lot of young businessmen that don't struggle with that. I struggle with it big time. I needed to be important, quote. So that was my driving force, is to be somebody, quote. And so, but in the Amway days, the nice thing is I ended up wanting our own home. My first marriage, which, was, if I be clear, was totally my fault. It did not survive. But we wanted to get a house built, and we could not afford the contractors. So me being reckless and full of, confidence, I said, I'll build my own house. So we built our own home, and that was my first entry into construction. Made a lot of mistakes on that, built it, and building that house showed me not only the construction business, but it's where I found the pool business, which is what I do now exclusively. We were living in a neighborhood called Fairhill on Bluebonnet, and my ex-wife called me one day while I was washing cars and said, man, the neighborhood pool's dirty, but did you know they pay this guy $400 a month to clean the pool? Well, as a young entrepreneur, we need every dollar we can get. My fence backed up to the pool, and I said, man, if I could start a pool cleaning company to go with my car wash, $400 a month would pay a lot of bills back in 30 years ago. And so I was literally washing cars at a lawyer's office, Kaiser Hood and Morgan, dear friends of mine still to this day. And I went in there and talked to Walter O'Rourke and said, I need to form another LLC. My car wash was Auto Butler. And so he said, just go to the Secretary of State's office. You don't need my help. And so I formed Pool Butler LLC. GW Oliver Construction wasn't even formed yet. Called the neighborhood lady, picked up the pool, didn't know a thing about pools, but called a local pool service guy. He paid him $100 to come show me how to run the equipment and clean a pool. And that's what got me into the pool business. I was washing cars and cleaning pools at that point. And then a couple of years later, we sold that house, built a second home for myself. And then my mom wanted me to build her a house in Santa Maria. Well, I had to have my license to do that. So I said, well, I'll go get my construction license. And so here, that's kind of how I entered the construction world. And then one of my good buddies at church at the time said, well, you got your contractor, why don't you build me a house? I said, well, I've only built 3 now. He said, well, we negotiated a very low fee so he could save some money, and we'd build it together. So I built that one, and that's when GW Oliver Construction, the home business, was formed probably, I guess, 28 years ago.
And that was a point where there was probably an inflection point where up to that point, maybe it was you or maybe you had a few people working for you. But like when you start handling all these different projects and then you've got your old businesses still going, like it sounded like you were just in startup mode, like as it relates to the added stress and like, just the spiritual stretch and the personal stretch. And can you kind of talk about like what those formative years were like for you with the construction business?
Yeah, the only employees, I had 1 or 2 guys washing cars. So there was really no employees. It was a lot of just reckless working. And that was a part of my life where I was so busy and I'd been trying to go to church and do the right thing. And I really kind of, my personal life kind of, for lack of a better word, came off the rails. And I really got so consumed with success and my, probably it was the hardest working I'd ever been, but I kind of personally got off the rails, and it was definitely a time in my life where I wasn't proud of getting off base a little bit or a great bit at the time, but the work was just, I'd wake up, wash cars, clean pools, go check my home. I'd build 1 or 2 homes at a time. It was literally nonstop. It was working from 4 in the morning. If I could I had some pools, I could turn the lights on in them and negotiate, can I clean your pool in the dark? And I'd get, it literally was working from 4 in the morning until 10 or 11 at night. So that was what I call total sole proprietor. Really just an employee that owned a business. I had no equity being formed. It was just reckless abandon. That's what that phase was like. It was rough.
And so at what point, because this is kind of where I'm at, like with Attract, as it relates to coming off startup phase, like we're going into year 5. We just made 4 years in April. And and talking to my other friends who are young entrepreneurs, and it takes 4 to 5 years to really make most of the mistakes in order to learn from them, and then, basically, hopefully going forward, they get fewer and farther between when you make these mistakes. But there's going to come a time when, you grow the business, and this is where we're at now, and we have more teammates, where you're not so in tune with everything anymore. And for me, thank God that I've got my family to keep me busy, and, I'm starting to get more family time with them. But I know that for you, kind of coming off of that, there was like some hobbies that you picked up. But when we pick up hobbies, we always feel like we're missing something, right? With work, like something's going to fall through the cracks. And so can you kind of talk about like, what did that look like in picking up the hobby of bow hunting? And, was it a point in your career where you felt like, okay, now I can breathe a bit, and almost use that as almost like a therapy, or like a kind of a way to even the scale, so to speak?
Well, your growth trajectory is way faster than mine, where you're going on a 4 or 5 year to mature to what you built today. Look at meeting all your folks today and seeing how impressive this is. Mine was more of 10 to 15 years. So I did not have, I always say entrepreneurs come in a lot of different fashions, first off. So, you have your entrepreneur that is an entrepreneur because his father was, and he takes over the family business. And I know I have a lot of great friends that are second generation guys, and they're tremendous business leaders. And it's, you have entrepreneurs that never even start their own business. I know a lot of CEOs of friends of mine that run companies for other men. I have guys that work for me in my company now that are really entrepreneurial, but they take their skill set into my company, and we partner together with profit sharings and stuff like that. You also have teachers out there that are very just impressive people that choose that route. So, but my journey was way slower because I was wanting to be a CEO, but had no CEO skills. So I went through lots. Once I started hiring employees in the construction company, and GW Oliver Construction truly started getting legs, and I had some investors doing some speculative homes. So I knew I had to hire people, but I was just really, really not very skilled at that. I didn't know how to make hard decisions. If somebody was in my company, and a lot of people don't realize, just because somebody doesn't work out at your company does not make them a bad person. Sometimes it's just a bad fit. And I had a lot of great folks that worked for me, because of my lack of leadership or just lack of knowledge, it wasn't a fit because I wasn't right yet. And so I had a lot of turnover, just trying to figure out where I stood and how to go from being a sole proprietor to a, quote, CEO or an executive or a real business owner. So my hobbies were put off for many, many years. I'm 58 now, or will be in November. And I didn't really start bow hunting again until I was in my mid to late 40s. So there was a 20-year scale in there where it was just work. I had no time, no money and all that to try to acclimate. But the beautiful thing is, when I did finally, because even when I wasn't running the company right, we were establishing some equity. We were becoming more profitable, even though I wasn't really running it properly. Just the massive work ethic was creating a little bit of financial freedom, at least beginning to accumulate a few things. Nothing always looked like I had more than I did, because it was so important to me back then to put on the show, which, was not a fun stage of my life, because it's very expensive. Nobody's really watching you, As I say sometimes, I produced the movie, The GW Show, and one day I woke up, realized I didn't have an audience. So that was kind of funny. So
building the construction company, it seems like that was a point where Baton Rouge was really growing, right?
It was. I hit the right market.
You timed it right.
I did.
And because I guess it was after Katrina, and I guess the rural sprawl is starting to happen with Ascension and Livingston and all that type of stuff. And it's really interesting to look at it now. because it seems like there's not really much more to build in this area. Now they're going out to St. Francisville and stuff like that. But when you had that opportunity, you still had to do a good job, because there's, at that point, if you were getting into the pool business a little bit further, there were some really well established players in the market.
Correct.
And so can you kind of talk about how, it goes from a construction company and then really just doing a lot of pools, and then that's when the advertising kicked off. Like, what did it feel like everyone else thought about this new guy coming into the pool business when there was all these, established places, already in the market?
That is a great point, because we were a construction company. When I started, the first company that really started making me have some extra capital to grow with was the construction business. And I was very fortunate that I had a couple really good investors that we went into more upscale home spec market. So the pools were just going to be an afterthought. That was always going to be my vision. We'd put a pool behind a house, and I would be the all-in-one shop. Like I didn't invent that. I thought I did back then, but it was very common. But what happened is we started getting into more custom homes, and I started building more pools. I really had a big break that I was able to get my commercial license, and that qualified me to build commercial pools. And I got in on the bidding process of some commercial projects. And one thing is, Baton Rouge was so established pool-wise, and we had some wonderful companies here. One of my dear friends is Keith Russell, Russell Pool Company, and they're still around today. I think he sold the company. But Keith really, and some of the other guys around here, had a real good stranglehold on the market. So I started traveling a little bit. I got to where I could go to Texas, and we would start building opportunities to build a few small apartment pools. And that really where I got I actually cut my teeth commercially. And one day, we'd built the biggest pool we'd ever built was on Burbank at an LSU apartment complex. And I started looking at some of the numbers, and it was a good job. And I realized that job took me, 8 to 10 work weeks, compared to a home taking, 7 to 12 months. And when I looked at the numbers and looked at how much I just loved it, I really felt like I was really learning how to do it the right way. I'd gone to a lot of classes, studied people. And actually, what really happened was once I started bow hunting, I was very fortunate one time, and I really stepped out and bought into a place called Togo Island up in Vicksburg, which was basically a 7,000 acre, they call it a share club if you're not a big hunter, but basically it's where a group of guys come together and buy property as a unit where they could buy more together, and you form a hunting club. And when I got in that and really started bow hunting again, I got to meet a lot of entrepreneurs up there and really gain confidence, if it will. And I met some wonderful guys, but I started realizing that I could do what they did. Not to insult them, but I felt like I didn't feel like they were any better. And I started growing up a little bit and getting over the image of being successful and realizing, and some of my morals started changing. I started growing as that there's something bigger to life than just making money, that it's a huge part of it. And one night, the most important talk I ever got, I think, one of the wealthiest individuals in Togo at the time, wonderful businessman from Shreveport, we were talking, and we happened to be alone on a Tuesday night eating dinner at his place up there. We each had our own places up there, and he invited me over. And being a wise businessman like he was, just incredibly wealthy in so many ways, he asked me about my companies. And he literally that night had me break down each company. And when I did, he asked me, well, which company do you like the best, and where do you make most of your money? I said, man, the pool business has really taken off. The home business, I had a guy I'd hired to run it. It really wasn't doing that well anymore. We'd kind of lost our step when I pulled out of it. And he looked me in the eye and said, well, why do you do both? Why don't you get super streamlined and you telling me the market is there with you traveling? Why don't you go all in on the pools and get rid of everything else? And I made a comment that night that changed my life. I said, well, part of my problem is I think I'm just too nice because the guy running my construction company needs it, and it helps cover my overhead. And he looked me dead in the eyes. I think it's the most important sentence ever said to me. And he said, well, let me ask you a question. If the guy running your home business is not making profits in home, I know many home businesses that are very profitable, why is he still running your home business, and why do you still build homes if it's not super profitable? And I said, without missing a beat, I guess I'm just too nice. And he looked at me, being a successful 60-something-year-old man, and said, I think you're using the wrong word. The word is weak. You're not nice, you're weak. Well, that cut me wide open. And he said, because let me explain what I mean by that. You have a wife, 3 children. At the time, I think I had 11 employees. He said, and when you protect an employee that is not doing a good job, because if he was doing a good job, you would be making money, then you are hurting your family and the other 11 employees. He said, because those people that work for you are taking their talents to come work under the GW umbrella, trusting that their leader, the CEO of the company, is going to make wise decisions. So when you hide behind the word nice, but you're hurting tons of other people protecting somebody not doing their job, that's not nice, that's weak. And if you want to ever go from being a sole proprietor to a CEO, you're going to have to learn that skill set. CEOs have to make very tough decisions. And sometimes letting somebody go is actually going to help them too, because they're out of position. And so that night, it was crazy. That was a Tuesday night, and the following Monday is when I decided to close down GW Oliver Construction Company and go all into GW Oliver Aquatics, is what we own now. And it was, and it was funny because I said GW Construction was helping cover overhead because we're all in the same office I just built, which really overbuilt at the time. Now we're underbuilt, but it was stretching me financially. And he said, but why would we use an unprofitable company to cover overhead? Just grow the profitable company. And that was a major, and I guess that was, I'm terrible with time, but 8 to 10 years ago. And it really, and then the guy running that company, we parted ways. We helped him find somewhere else to go, and, he's doing fine, I'm sure. But it also gained some credibility within my organization that, he's willing to finally get a backbone and start making real decisions that make a company prosper. And, the weird thing is I had some wonderful people working for me back then, but except for my labor force, because I got some incredible guys in the field that actually make it happen. We do most of our own construction. We don't sub a lot of stuff out. We sub occasionally, but mainly we do a lot of our own digging, steel. We self-perform. We have a real construction division in the pool company. But the whole leadership team at that time has now moved on to do other things. Many of them doing very well. But what had happened, I realized, is the folks running the company had been trained by the old me. And so I had done such a poor job of creating the culture properly that when we changed the culture, all the, quote, leadership ended up moving on and doing other things except for my wife. And the girl who actually was a receptionist now is the office manager. So we had to have a whole dynamic shift in thinking to get to where we are today with a leadership team that just the guys and girls that work for us now, it's such unity. Some of the just greatest, and the whole dynamic changed. Like when I walk through your office here and I see all the, you could just tell it's alive. People are excited, pulling in the same direction. And back then, with me being a poor leader, we just pulled in the wrong directions because the leader was off. And so now that we've gotten this unity, just watching the growth that's happened, and the last 10 years have just, I would have never dreamed, moving into Florida. Now we have a huge Florida market, Texas, Alabama, Mississippi. We travel so much now to do projects I would have never dreamed of, putting pools in the Superdome and the Smoothie King Center, building rooftop pools in Austin, Texas. Just stuff that I never really, the pool being an afterthought business, I would have never believed we'd be one of the leaders in the commercial pool world now. And look, we still do tons of residential pools, just some of the greatest clients on earth. So that was the real dynamic shift, is when I got cut open and realized if I don't want to be a sole proprietor and I want to build something that's got a value and an equity to it, I have to build a real company and become a CEO to get where we are today.
And so you mentioned it, right? Bringing your wife, Lisa, into the fold. I always thought, like, growing up, like, you hear businessmen say, like, I could never work with my wife, and yet, you do it successfully. Jeff Lejeune was on here a couple of weeks ago. He does it successfully. It takes a very special man, a very special wife, and a relationship together to make that happen. But could you kind of talk us through, like, what did that look like when she entered the business, time-wise? And it sounds like it really exceeded your expectations of what it would look like.
Correct. Right? Well, when we met, being a second marriage, I'd gotten divorced, and then I'd known of Lisa. She'd wrote my insurance, but we'd never dated or anything. And then 2 or 3 years after my divorce, her being my insurance agent, we built a friendship, and we've been married now 17 years, so she was very successful in the insurance business. And then about, 4 or 5 years in our marriage, the GW was making enough capital where we felt like she could step back. She wasn't very good at retirement. That lasted about 2 weeks. She poked her head in my office, and I think it scared the fire out of her to realize how many processes we did not have. So Lisa injected into the company. Well, you can imagine the first couple of years of her telling me I did it wrong, with a male ego like I had at the time, because I was still beginning my journey to grow, but still very reckless and still hadn't tightened up all my loose ends in my personal life. The first several years were very challenging for me. What she was saying was right, but it was insulting me as a man that, you're going to tell me how to run my company. Well, technically, yes. She did. So she started bringing in people that could get our accounting straightened out. I didn't know about. It's embarrassing to say, but receivables, payables. My accounting method was, if Friday we had money, I was happy. If we didn't, we needed to go scramble to get money. Well, that's no way to live. Debts everywhere. It was a miserable time. Well, when she saw what it looked like behind the curtain, she said, no, we're not living like this forever. So she brought the processes into place. And we have a funny saying in our business that guy's an excellent rainmaker, but he's a horrible collector of water. So we need some gutter systems to collect the water coming off the roof. And that's where Lisa stepped in to really bring in the processes to where we could capture money. And then we went on a massive, due to her, debt reduction. We had lines of credit drawn out, had some credit cards out there that we had, to keep things going. Running a business, sometimes the checks didn't come on time, and so but I wasn't eliminating the debt. We would have a good month, and I'd go do something silly, to keep the lifestyle going. And she finally said, no, we're not doing this. Nobody's watching you. Nobody cares. We need to get legit. And that's when that started. So nowadays, it couldn't be more fluid the way we work together today. It's just, her role's the office. I don't sign checks. I don't own a laptop. You see how I dress every day? I'm in the field. I work with my guys every day, and she frees me up to do that. So, like, I put about 90,000 miles a year on my truck. So, but it enables me to be in the field, working with we have 4 or 5 superintendents, I have to count them up, and then it was life-changing. We became a real company, something that we know where every dollar is. Lisa, over the years, she has paid off all of our real estate, all of those credit cards and lines of credit. We literally just got rid of a big line of credit because we hadn't used it in 5 years. So it was, once you learn how to work together, number one, you have total trust, you know, that we're going for the same reasons. And it was major. You have to learn your weaknesses and find people that cover your weaknesses up. My strengths are construction.
Yeah.
And I hate to say this out loud, I'm not a great businessman. You got entrepreneurs out there that are wonderful. They're just true entrepreneurs. I'm a labor guy that just works very, very, very hard, that has to have business people working with me.
Keep it in
to
check.
Corral me.
Yeah.
Correct.
It's interesting you say that, because I was going to bring the work ethic piece back, because I was talking to LaRussa the other day, and I can't remember if he was in Carriagewood or somewhere else, but he said he was driving by and he saw you in the middle of the street pressure washing dirt in the middle of the street. And he said, "Guy, what are you doing, man? Don't you have like people to do this?" And you said something along the lines of, "This is just unacceptable." He's like, and you said, I got to get this cleaned up right now. And this is, 25, 30 years into your business now, and yet you still have that work ethic. And so, I mean, knowing you personally, you still very much get your hands dirty and you really lead from the front, right? And it sounds to me like that's really what rallies your guys to stay with you, or to keep pushing, or to develop themselves and, keep pushing for challenges. I think another thing that, in the pool business, I'm sure, and construction in general, is risk, right? And so, you had some big breaks, with the commercial pools and stuff like that. Was there ever a time in the pool business specifically where you were like, man, that could have gone the other way and like taken this whole thing down?
Oh, goodness gracious. I was overstepping, what do they say, getting over my skis too far. The first rooftop pool I did, just really should have asked more questions. Luckily, just from true outworking and doing things 3 and 4 times, I've made enough dumb decisions in the past 25, 30 years to be out of business 50, 100 times. There's no question about it. There's definitely been a sense of good fortune, wherever it comes from, whether it's blessed or not, but just to be surviving where I'm at today. I've gotten way, way out of line with where I should have been, but always willing to go back and do it. But what happens in the business world, a lot of entrepreneurs are true entrepreneurs. Like, they literally need to be in the office. They need to do the numbers. They do that stuff. Me being in the labor world and having a wife that supports me in the office, like the day I saw LaRussa, for instance, I have plenty of guys, but my guys are working. Like, we get to the warehouse at 5:30 in the morning and we're out. If we're working out of town, sometimes we'll meet at 4:30 to get the excavators loaded up and be running to Florida. So when my guys want to be working at daylight. So if we got a 4-hour drive, they'll leave at 4 a.m. because they want to go get our Airbnbs, and we're rocking till daylight to dark. So a day like that, there was nobody available. Well, the neighborhoods we work on don't allow dirt in the street. So if the dirt's going to leave and I got a pressure washer and all my guys, nobody's sitting on the couch watching Oprah Winfrey, I can tell you that. So you do it. But I think every entrepreneur's like that. That's nothing special with me. It's just some guys are doing it behind a laptop. I'm doing it in the field. And if my skills were behind the laptop, that's where I would be. But that's just not who I am. I've been a car wash guy, I've been a pool cleaner, I've been a construction guy. I'm not the white collar guy. I don't have that skill set. And I have friends of mine say, "Oh, you act like you're not a good businessman," but you got to know where your skills are. I'm not the guy that's going to run $1 billion company for you. Like, that's just not who I am. And you got to know where you stand. And we all have roles, and you got to know your roles. So there's just, we will do it. I mean, I went and cleaned. I was in False River yesterday. We were gunite in a swimming pool, and crazy. We had just finished a pool on False River, and it's a dear customer of mine. We built 4 pools for him. And he calls me and says, man, my pool cleaner quit but didn't tell me, and I hadn't been to my False River house in a while, and I have somebody coming Friday. Do you have anybody who can go clean the pool? I said, you're not going to believe this. I'm 5 miles away from your house. He goes, I'm literally on False River gunlighting in a pool, and I'll go do it real quick. I said, you got any chemicals there? Because I don't have chemicals in my truck. He goes, yeah, I got some stuff there. I said, look, I'll go do it real quick. And so he's like, really? I said, look, it's just meant to be. I'm right here. So I went and, I had to actually, sadly, I'm so out of practice, had to call a guy who used to work for me. My nephew, Todd Guidry, he's very successful in his own pool business now. And I said, Todd, I need some help. How do I open this filter? I'm so out of practice, but he walked me through it, and we got it cleaned and sent a guy there this morning to make sure it's ready for the Friday party. And
that's awesome.
But I think every entrepreneur who's watching this knows that's just what you do.
That's right.
That's just what you do. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's nothing, you're not going to make it if you don't have that attitude.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned it a few times, but getting the business in check, bringing the wife in, letting go, working on what you do best, letting the other pros do what they do best. There was a point there of also getting involved with other mentors and people who, I've heard you say, like, it kind of came out of nowhere and they just kept coming. And there was this point in your life where, you really started to develop character-wise. And so kind of walk us through, we've talked about the entrepreneur journey. We talked about a little bit of the marriage journey. Talk us through that development, the character, the spirituality piece of it, because it's, to me, the piece that sticks out the most as it relates to what I know about you.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just, we have a men's group that meets on Thursdays and Fridays at my office, 2 different groups. You're part of the Friday group. We were in the Thursday group and a new guy joined, and I made a comment. I said, I've been married 3 times, but to 2 women. And it's so true. The first marriage went bad because of me. Everybody says there's 2 people to blame, and that one, I can tell you right now, 98% was me. So Lisa and I then get married. We've been married 17 years, but when we got married, to be blunt, we shouldn't have gotten married. I mean, me and Lisa laugh about it today. We were both not where we needed to be. Mm-hmm. We were both still seeking. So our first, 5 to 7 years of marriage, maybe even longer, I don't know the timeline, but 2 lost people trying to communicate. Me, Lisa's pretty independent, and me being kind of a very expressive, outgoing guy, needing a lot from a marriage. Us trying to learn how to navigate that, and some of my bad character traits that I wanted to kind of get rid of were rearing their ugly heads. And, so her and I went through some challenges for first 6 or 7 years of marriage. And then some of the guys I was hunting with, I just started seeing dudes that I wasn't worshiping their wealth like I used to. I was more looking for their peace. I was meeting guys that some of them wealthy, some of them not wealthy, but just guys that they didn't lead with money. I think in the world of church, I'm a big, church goer now, and, some of my friends might say holy roller, whatever, just cutting up and joking with me. But I started realizing, I think the church does a bad idea that we use the word bless as a synonym to wealthy. And it started hitting me that money can be a part of a blessing for sure, but it's such a small part of being, quote, blessed. There's a piece that I started seeing in men. And so one of my pastors at my church invited me to a men's group 9 years ago, which is now the Friday group you and I are part of. We met at some office on Bluebonnet. And I started hanging out with some guys and just really getting cut open, like really getting exposed for some of the things that I had brought forward from my childhood. Just, we all battle stuff. And when that started happening, I just really started going on a journey of, God, I got to be a little better than this. Like it was the me show, and you start realizing, man, if GW Oliver only serves GW Oliver, the man that started it, then who's going to lock into that deal? Like learning how to the guys and girls I have working for me now, I mean, they have their own dreams and goals. And if we're not going to do this together to where all of our dreams and goals are at a track here, if you don't have a system to where everybody wins, then it ain't going to work. And that really became, I started really realizing, man, I need to start really looking outside and serving others a little more. And so that was a big journey. And then that Bible study started growing in men's group, just getting to know dudes and really getting cut open. And so that was the start of the journey about 8 or 9 years ago when I really said, you know what, the guy I am today, I'm not real, I'd like to change.
And I think that's the same for me too. I mean, you look at, my development as it relates to, kind of having a mindset shift and a paradigm shift of, going one way of the entrepreneurship, the hard driver, money first type of thing. And then, getting involved in that same men's group and being, 15, 20, 30 years junior of a lot of guys in that room, and like really having it's like a time machine, right? Like I could see where I'm at in 25 or 30 years and having like that plan, like that vision, like that North Star of where I want to go. But I've heard you say, like, as part of like the development, there was just this one quote that really like just smoked you. And so can you kind of go into that and like what led up to that?
It's so funny. When I say my third marriage started, me and Lisa really locking arms and saying, man, we can do better, both of us. And it was kind of neat. All the struggles we went through, we just said, this is what I did wrong. This is what you did wrong. And we started really just kind of pulling together. One day I came home and I told Lisa, I said, I read a quote today that really summarizes what's changing in me. And the quote was a very simple quote. I don't know where I saw it. It just said, the quote was, "This world has lost its grip on me." And I said, man, what a powerful statement. Because being an entrepreneur, being a guy that came from a wealthy school, wanting to be important so badly, wanting for people to see you. Now, what did that mean back then? It mean just be wealthy. To realizing, okay, wealth's a big part of it. We do very well today, but it finally hit me. I said, Lisa, I think the world's lost its, like I'm not chasing that anymore, that I'm starting to see people differently, like noticing other people. And so that quote really was a real, and she's like, that is so true, because nobody is less materialistic than my wife, first of all. I mean, she never battled that. Not everybody's the same. Like looking at yourself at your age, when you joined the men's group, I was like, I told you that time, I said, it's just so cool to see a guy that doesn't have to be 50 years old to wake up and become a good human being. Like to see young men, and I'm seeing them everywhere now, 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds that are not eat up with the materialism bug and they're driven. I mean, they're very successful guys, but that doesn't define them. It took me much longer. Like I said, you talk about 4 or 5 years. I'm more of a 15 to 20-year guy. I was more hard-headed, and I had more things I had to uncover to get to where I needed to go. But that quote was real critical, just to tell me that, it doesn't control me anymore like it did. And it totally controlled me for 20 years or so, or more of my life. And
your circle changed too, right?
It did. And it's funny because I have such a wide circle now. I'm friends with guys from church. Yep. Last week I went to lunch with 2 of my dearest friends from high school, and they don't go to church where I go to church, but we talk openly about, great guys. But absolutely, circle did change and got some great mentors. It's just when I look back and see my journey, if this guy wouldn't have entered my life when I was 42, if this guy didn't enter my life at 48, and if this, whether it's guy or girl, just if these people didn't enter my life, how critical at that phase, at that point in my game, I needed that person exactly when they came into my life. So it's just crazy, almost way to be coincidental.
Yeah.
On where it's led us.
And so you're becoming this organization. You brought in some awesome talent, the next generation. Let's kind of get into what that looks like. And then almost shifting your focus to like a legacy heritage, right? Of like what you've got going on in the community. So let's talk a bit about that next generation of leadership inside your company that is now allowing you to really focus on, I've heard you say, like your true purpose.
Yeah. Like if you would go through the leadership, the guys I partner with at GW that have taken their talents and said, look, I'm going to lock in with you. And some of the guys and girls that work for us now, it's so cool as a guy that was a sole proprietor for so long. And you start realizing it slowly, because when your phone rings nonstop, where it would ring 17 hours a day, every problem came through you. And then all of a sudden you start adding a few leaders and the phone calls stop coming through you. Well, then you get a little bit disturbed, because now you're like, wait, y'all aren't including me in all these decisions. Mm-hmm. And so as that goes on, you start developing a trust when you realize, wait, you got real Jimmy and Joes and Melissas that can actually help you now. Mm-hmm. And when you start trusting that these problems are going away and I'm not making them go away, that's when the CEO starts forming, when you realize what real CEOs know is it's a leadership team of guys that are better sometimes at what you're doing. And so when that started happening, it freed me up a little bit to where, like, we're sitting in this meeting, I've not heard my phone ring one time. Well, that would have rang 30 times 10 years ago, when I had everything ran through me. And that about 8 or 9 years, Lisa and I were interviewing people, and it hit me how poorly trained a lot of the local workers we were trying to get, as a way to say it. And I started realizing we weren't doing a very good job in America of really training to find labor pools that, weren't Hispanic and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. In several people we interviewed, it was sad almost. Like they couldn't even perform an interview. Mm. Well, so about a week or two later, I hear from church that they have a group forming. Back then it was called, I forget what it was called. HPC Serve.
Serve, yeah.
And I was talking to one of our pastors. I said, man, I feel like I want to get involved in helping mentor kids. He said, well, man, we got a ministry called HP Serve. Now it's Empower 225. We would love to have more entrepreneurs involved like you, and you can mentor youth and all that. And as you know, I got on the board of directors, I guess 8 or 9 years ago. And we have actually a place up on in the 70805 zip code, and I've been heavily involved in that, and that really, really cut me open. Mm. When you meet, what we found is nobody we're serving in in Empower 225, almost 100% of these kids and youth have fathers, don't have fathers. In other words, 100% are fatherless.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. And you start meeting these youth, and yes, they're ignorant, but they're not stupid.
Right.
They just don't know. And so I went, the one good thing about me and bad thing is I go head first. If I'm going to bow hunt, I'm going to bow hunt every day. It's my only hobby besides Jesus and business and family is I love to bow hunt. You know that. And for the past 14 years, I've been kind of crazy about that. But same thing when I got into inner city. I said, if I'm going in, I'm going all in. Let's go. And I started doing, we do trainings. You've seen it in my office with these youth. And it's been so cool because over 8 years, I've got multiple kids I started mentoring 8 years ago that now are mentors in the program that are, we've got them through, because we'll invest in getting them training as far as we'll sometimes invest in vehicles for them. we'll invest in one of my guys that I've actually become almost like a dad-son relationship. He's now a FedEx worker, got his CDL license. So we'll put a lot of our money back into training, welding schools. We got some AC technicians, just really getting in there and saying, hey, guys, this is how the world works. If your college level will get you there, but a lot of these guys are more blue collar like me. And so we get them into technical colleges. We do after school programs, just teaching the basics of what a dad and mom would teach these kids. But I couldn't do that if I wouldn't have ventured out and got a real team of leadership to run GW Oliver and let me, back away from everything, still very involved, still work 60, 70, 80 hours a week. But when you used to work 120 and you go to work in 60, you feel like you don't have a job anymore.
Yeah.
It's so different to get home at 5 because, I get up at 4 every day still. We're out on the road in the dark, but I don't work till 9 or 10 at night unless we have to occasionally. If we're working out of town and a job runs late, you just do what you're supposed to do. But it's enabled me to get be a business owner and also a community guy that gets involved in the community. And that's been really, really incredible, as you know.
Yeah,
you're part of it too.
You're not just writing the checks. I mean, you're leading the guys, you're putting them up in housing. Empower 225 has the Anchor House, which is, ultimately for folks who age out of the foster care program, but still need a place to live. Again, we're developing skills in these young men who, just didn't have the same opportunity. Everybody talks about everybody's got the same opportunity in America.
They don't.
No.
They do if they can be trained.
Yeah. If
the opportunity's there, but they don't even know about it.
That's right. They don't even know about it. And just what I know about Empower 225 and the staff over there, and obviously the board of directors, it's connecting people who don't know but want to know with the people who do know and want to teach. Correct. It's like just a perfect mix. And it's just, even from my limited involvement in Empower 225, like it's just so rewarding to pour into someone who wants to learn. Because you and I both know, like we're trying to hire these people for these different positions, and you can't even get people to show up on time and to look the part. And I mean, I've heard of guys in Empower walk miles and miles to go to work, and then we get them a bike, and then we get them a car, and it's just got to be so fulfilling to then watch those students turn into teachers, right? And so what's next for Empower? I think there's a lot of opportunity going forward. I think word's continuing to get out of Empower 225. Is it just more of the same, just day by day, soul by soul, just trying to connect to Jesus?
Well, number one, we have a very generous businessman that I do life with. Is we're fixing to do a major remodel to our facilities up there due to businessmen that were successful giving back in just tremendous ways. So that's fixing to happen now. And we've gotten some additional businessmen who have gotten involved lately. So we're doing our workforce program now, where we're actually doing construction training and some other. There's, what we're finding is most people are good people. You got your occasional just bad folks out there, but most people, when they know of a need, will step up and get involved. And that's what you're talking about, that more and more people hearing about what's happening and you become aware of a need, people will fill it. Well, if you don't know there's needs there, they won't. So we're doing a whole lot more, what is it called? Oh man, I'm terrible at this, but we're doing our after-school program, which is for the younger kids, so they have somewhere after high school to get mentored, to get not just mentored, but also tutored. Oh yeah, and all that stuff. Then we're doing these leadership. We got a new guy named Lemoyne. Lemoyne is doing some amazing things. He's got the ability and the gift of taking the ones they're trying to get their GEDs, teaching them the basic skill sets, and then we're coming into this construction classes, and then we're getting them job sourced after that. So it's like you said, we're only about 8 or 9 years old, but it's starting to really get some legs, and people are starting to take note. And we're getting some crazy generous businessmen from around the community that are hearing about it, that are stepping up. So I cannot wait to see the next 4 or 5 years with just the leaders that have come on already this year. So it's pretty exciting times.
And at the same time, you're dealing with somewhat of an identity crisis inside of like the business, right? And that like the business is not needing you that much anymore, right? And it's creating this void of like, you've conditioned yourself for 50 years or, to work hard and to be up early and to drive and get those wins and those dopamine hits. And then all of a sudden you're not on the field anymore, which is really what you wanted to be in the beginning. You wanted to be on the sideline or maybe in the press box, just kind of watching it all play out. But you've lost those first downs. You've lost those 3-pointers. You're not shooting
the quarterback
them
anymore.
And so how has that been for you as you kind of enter this next phase of, grandfatherhood and still being a great husband and being a philanthropist and that entrepreneur piece kind of like waning?
No, it's funny you say that. A businessman in town about 3 years ago and I were at lunch, and he said, "Man, I'm going through some stuff right now. My company, it was rolling." I said, "Must be awesome." He said, "It is, but I'm not needed anymore." And it's been weird that I am having to understand that I have built what I wanted to build, but now I'm not necessary. Kind of like when a child leaves the home and all of a sudden they become an adult, and you're like, okay, like Lisa and I are now empty nesters. The youngest child is now 25 and works at GW Oliver. So I've started to experience that this year where things are happening that I don't know about, and I'm having to learn how to find a different, like you say, you want to be free, but when you're free, so many prisoners go back to jail.
Yeah.
They get out of prison, they're like, I'm not comfortable here. I want to go back, is what I know. And what I knew was the prison of a company that I had to do everything. And now I'm actually realizing I have strengths. There's no doubt about it. But within my company, there's many people that have better strengths at what they're doing than if I was doing it. Mm-hmm. And so I have to find out what my role is now, is more of a mentor / I'm not the guy preaching every week, quote. I've got to hand off the ball. And I love it now. I don't work Fridays now generally, so I'm learning how to relax. And, we have property up in, I like to hunt, so I go get on my tractor and do my thing. And the beautiful thing is, if I'd have done that 10, 12 years ago, my phone would have rang off the hook. I wouldn't have had any fun. Mm. But it hit me 3 Fridays ago. I got on my tractor and bush hogged for 6 hours on my place. And I did not miss a call. And man, when I got done, it was a cool moment, thanking, God that, wow, I know what the company's doing because I watched the numbers. And I didn't do any of it for the last 5 hours. And it was like, this is what I've dreamed about. But when you take 5 years, it's one thing. But when you struggle for 20, and don't forget the first 10, when I was in Amway and car washing, then it was 20 more. So to really get to where we are today, it really started really clicking big time around 47, 48. So it's only been about 10 years. We've done well, but to really have a real business that was paying me, not me just doing the work, you do it so long, you almost don't think it's going to work. You just realize, okay, well, I'll outwork it. I'll just work 80, 120 hours a week, and we'll just keep paying our bills. Well, when that goes away and you start realizing the company has got its own identity, and it's not just me, it's a struggle at first, but then you got to step back and say, wait, this is what we wanted. This is what the men I've been mentoring off of were telling me was going to happen, and it's starting to happen for me. It just took so long, I didn't believe it was going to happen. And so that's the beauty. Like, Lisa's got us 100% debt free. It's just like, when you're in debt that long and just faking it, quote, and you become legitimate somewhat, and look, wealth, there's so many levels of wealth. I mean, you got billionaires, you got millionaires. But man, my dad used to say, when you can pay your bills comfortably every week, that is 99% of financial success right there. The other 1% is waning. That's buying a silly watch or a car and stuff like that, which is awesome, or a bow. And that little bump lasts about a week, and then that bow's older, that watch is older, that car's older. If some of my friends now are getting so wealthy, they have jets. Well, the first time you get on your private jet, it means something. And I do not have one. I'm a pool guy. But, you fly first class for the first. All these things are great. But once you've flown on a private jet, some of my friends say 50, 100 times, that's just your life now. So it doesn't actually do anything for you anymore. And so once you can handle your bills and you're under control, that is such a freeing moment. And that's when you can really become generous, because you don't have bills anymore the same way you used to when you had kids in private school. My kids are gone. I don't have private school anymore. I don't have all the crazy bill. I don't have a house note anymore. So it's like your income starts getting bigger. You have nowhere to spend it, quote, except on fun little vacations for family and stuff. But you can start becoming generous because you realize this is what we work for, excess. That we can start reinvesting and doing.
Just making a huge difference.
It's still bow hunting, still spending some money on hunting and stuff. I'm not going to act like I don't, but yeah, a bigger difference. That's right. That's right. So
as we wrap up here, like going forward, it's more of the same for you. It's continuing on, like leaving that legacy, working for Jesus, telling more people about him, getting people connected with, the true to the source and where to learn from, and just connecting people who seek knowledge to people who have the knowledge. And, at this point in your life, are you excited about the next 10 years, the next 20 years? Like, how does it really feel to be at this moment where you're kind of fresh on being not needed, but going forward, it's like, got to be pretty exciting to be truly free, like they said in Amway, right?
No, Lisa and I were talking. We went to Africa a couple of weeks ago together. Vacation/mission trip. We definitely did some fun things, but we did a ton of mission work too. And, I was saying to one of the guys there with us, I wish I could stop the clock almost at 57. Because you're finally comfortable in your own skin. You're finally not in the rat race anymore, quote. You're not struggling Fridays, like my dad said about the bill thing. He said, when you have money in your checkbook, bills aren't miserable. So you don't think about bills the same way as when you did 15 years ago. I thought about them all the time because I didn't have anything to pay them. It was such a grind. So at this stage of our life, we got back from Africa. Lisa just spent 3 days in Destin with our oldest daughter, her daughter, our oldest daughter, and 2 grandsons. And, it's just, this is the most peaceful, you as an entrepreneur know. When you're an entrepreneur, I've told people this, and I never had a job, so I don't understand. Job folks probably have the same thing, because if you're in leadership, I did not sleep comfortably for probably 20, 25 years. I would dream about problems all the time. And if I didn't have a problem that day, my brain would create a problem. You probably can relate to this. I'd wake up at 3 a.m, panicked. Wake up at 5 a.m, panicked. It's like a duck with his feet going crazy. Nobody can see the feet moving, but I lived in fear because I was one pool falling through. We were such on the cusp of going, like most young businesses, that I had to learn how to relax. Even today I catch myself every now and then. I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, wait, that's 20 years ago. Like my subconscious will bring up a problem. So it really is. It's the most peaceful time of our life. Our spiritual life's locked in, marriage is locked in. 3 daughters locked in, grandbabies. The youngest daughter's not married yet, but we know we have our 5th grandbaby on the way. It really is. I'm having to learn to become peaceful, but I'm starting to get good at it finally. So it really has been wonderful.
That's great.
The journey was harder than I thought, for sure. Would I do it again? I don't know. I might get a job and but it's really nice to be finally relaxed.
Well, the whole peace thing, I think, is what we're all after. And it's awesome to have you on and to share the journey of, just someone who was born here, developed a business here, got out of the business, so to speak, still has it, moved on to philanthropy and mentorship and just pouring back into other people. And so I just can't thank you enough for being here and sharing your story with our listeners. And I think they're going to get a lot out of it.
I enjoyed a lot of it. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, GW.
Yes, sir.